very interesting angle to the opposite sides of the world. Today we have a very interesting speaker, Matthew Sorell, who is a senior lecturer in Adelaide University and also in Tallinn in the Tallinn University of Technology. And he has had some very interesting experiences in exchanging the knowledge between students and also organizing exchange programs between the two universities, and has seen this as a very fruitful collaboration. And also Matthew is a man of many talents. He's also a member of the Interpol Digital Forensics Experts Group, for example. And his areas of knowledge are very wide, and I am thinking today's talk will be very, very interesting. We have some great guests joining today, some of whom we have known from chamber events before, and some of whom I also know are actually involved in similar fields. So I will hand it over to Matthew, and enjoy the talk.
Okay, hi. I'm treating this as a University of Adelaide talk, and we are recording today's presentation so that I can present an edited version to my colleagues at Adelaide University and Tallinn. So I'll begin by acknowledging the Kaurna people, the original custodians of the Adelaide Plains and the land on which the University of Adelaide's campuses at North Terrace, Waite, Thebarton and Roseworthy are built. And I thought it would be appropriate probably to just begin with a few words in Estonian, because I can. So let me do that. Minu nimi on Matthew Sorell, olen Adelaide'i ülikooli ja Tallinna ülikooli digitaalse koostöö ekspertiisi professor. Kuigi ma pole eestlane, külastan Eestit sageli. Mulle meeldib Eesti väga hea. Täna räägin Adelaide'i ülikooli ja Tallinna ülikooli koostööst, mis algas 2014. aastal. Aga ma räägin inglise keeles seetõttu, et paljud meie külalised ei räägi eesti keelt, kuid peamiselt seepärast, et ka mina ei räägi eriti eesti keelt. So now, back to English. I am quite happy for people to interrupt or ask questions as we go on the chat. I don't actually have the chat line. Oh, there's chat, right. So if you do want to ask questions as we go, I'm very comfortable with you doing that. This is a program that we've been running between Tallinn and Adelaide since 2014. First, some further background. So I'm at the University of Adelaide since 2018. I've also been adjunct professor at Tallinn. I very much enjoy that relationship that I have there between the two universities. Just for the benefit of the very few people here who don't know where we are, Estonia is up in the northeast corner of the European Union, just below Finland, but I think everybody online today knows this. The most common question I get, of course, is, why Estonia? What are you doing over there? Particularly from my Adelaide colleagues and people in the cybersecurity space. And it's really because, well, it all began for me really in 2014 when I was invited to speak at the opening of the digital forensics program at Tallinn University of Technology. And I managed to catch up with an old friend I hadn't seen for 20 years, and she's now an angel investor in Estonia, who connected me with government and some private sector people. And in the process, I realized that there was a real opportunity to expose Adelaide University students to a diverse range of quite hardened cybersecurity and some really interesting digital government principles that we really didn't have here in Australia. So, for example, the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defence Centre of Excellence is located in Tallinn. Some people will tell you that this was a response to the cyber attack of 2007. In fact, it was already in train. That cyber attack simply ensured that the centre got a little bit more priority. Let me show you an example then from there. I've got some videos and I hope they play for you, but this is from the NATO CCDCOE Locked Shields exercise of 2017. And if you'd like to play, you can play Spot the Celebrity over the next minute or so. Love the dramatic music there. Did we spot any celebrities? You can use the chat or unmute yourself for a moment. All right, okay, so Julie Bishop was there at one point, our then foreign minister, and Kersti Kaljulaid, the Estonian president, was also present during that presentation. I know a bunch of other people in that presentation. So the Locked Shields exercise is what's called a live fire game, and so it's a serious game for training in which there's a red team who are the aggressors, essentially hacking computer systems of the defending country. Now, the defending country is actually replicated about 20 to 25 times. So there are different countries effectively acting as the blue team, defending their infrastructure. So it very much reflects the nature of what happened, in fact, in the Estonian experience in 2007 with the massive cyber attacks against government services. This isn't a technical talk, so I won't go into the details. I want to focus really on the relationships and some of the outcomes that we've had. But it gives you an example that Estonia actually has a serious place in this particular area. What else do we do? Well, we run a year-long research project. So our honours students here at the University of Adelaide, which for me are predominantly electrical and electronics engineering, but there are also students in cybersecurity as well as in computer science. And we run our year-long project on a diverse range of cybersecurity problems. And you can see some examples here, which I won't go into. Once again, not a technical talk, but the students do make an original contribution into a cybersecurity question. And you might wonder, well, what's that got to do with Estonia? Because Estonia really is an opportunity, is a a location where we have an opportunity to do some really interesting things and take a few more risks than perhaps we're allowed to do in Australia. So our students are focused on this, and as part of that program, we then take them over to Estonia for the European summer, usually mid-June to mid-July. We, of course, have to avoid Janipäev, so midsummer, because everyone's gone, and it's always difficult to schedule, because if we do it immediately before Janipäev, then everybody's busy at work, and if we do it immediately afterwards, everybody's gone on holiday. So it's a little bit of a game to identify the best time to go. And so we come to Tallinn, and part of our tour begins with just experiencing some of the local attractions and meeting with local businesses. So in the top corner, you will see here the original KGB listening post at the what was the Intourist Hotel, now the Viru Hotel, left apparently much as it was when it was abandoned in 1993, I believe. I've seen the tour now very many times, and it hasn't changed much from year to year. But it's really important for our students to see this and understand the context of Soviet occupation, because it does set the scene for a lot of Estonian opinion around private information and how you interact with government. Of course, we spent a lot of time in Old Town Tallinn. We visit some magnificent restaurants. This is Umami Resto in where is it? It's not in Mr. It is in Mr. May, or at least it was. It's gone now. And of course the Nema Turg as well, the Nema Farmers Market as well. So we do spend some time just experiencing life and culture in Tallinn. We also visit the Tallinn University of Technology campus. This is Mectory, which is their innovation hub, and it provides a lot of opportunities for to incubate small-scale projects that are initiated by Taltech students. My students here are posing in the Australia room, which is where my photograph was taken on the flyer for this event. But not at this particular point in time. So it's a really effective space to work in and to work with our students. What else can I show you? Well, one of the things that we do is we take our students to an interdisciplinary cyber research workshop. So this is students presenting papers that they've prepared that have gone through a peer review process, and it gives our students, both Adelaide students, Taltech students, but Estonian students, and indeed a more diverse range of students. We do also get some from other European countries come and present their work at this workshop. So let me show you some of that briefly.
Well, ICI is well publicised on the intranet in Taltech and on the wider intranet. So there's lots of opportunities to discover the conference, and of course there's word of mouth as well. It's been going for 5 years, so there's many people who have participated previously who will recommend the conference as a good event to attend.
The ICR creates a unique environment of young scholars researching cybersecurity and all issues related to it to discuss ideas and meet in a very friendly environment.
Well, the key thing is it's multidisciplinary, which means it's not just technical, but involves social sciences and the whole spectrum, the full spectrum of cybersecurity disciplines. This means that you can come and you can learn about other areas of cybersecurity which you wouldn't necessarily be involved in, and you can learn new aspects and also make valuable new contacts. It's a really good opportunity to meet people, there's good networking opportunities, and also there's the opportunity to have abstracts peer reviewed, and also the opportunity to win prizes.
So if you're writing an innovative article, just come here and use it as a testing ground for your ideas and see what the community thinks.
So this is one of the events that we've organised, and we've been running that since 2015. It gives our students a chance to present their work, and of course to share that and to listen to what our Estonian and other colleagues are doing as well as part of their research. Once again, not a technical presentation, so I won't go into the details. We also engage with government. Sim Sikut, the National Chief Information Officer, CIO, has met with us every year that we've run the program, except last year for obvious reasons. He was previously the digital advisor to the Prime Minister, and hence we've had access to the cabinet room, as you can see down on the bottom right. We've also met well, at least one previous Prime Minister, Taavi Rõivas, and we've also met with Taavi Kotka a couple of times. So Taavi Kotka was the previous CIO, and we're now also regularly meet with his group, Proud Engineers, here in Tallinn. So that's important for us to discuss with that. And what I particularly appreciate with Sim's contribution is that he takes the time to hear our students and find out what's going on in Australia, and to share some ideas about current thinking around digital government and digital engagement in Estonia. But the main piece that we run is our cybersecurity summer school, and each year we run it on a different topic. We started this in 2015. Last year's summer school was intended to be around car hacking and autonomous vehicles, and of course, everything was in lockdown in June and July. We did actually manage to run the program online in December, so it's a summer school in winter. I guess it's summer here, so let's call it a summer school. So our students participated from Adelaide in the evening. We made use of my electric vehicle to have something to hack over here, and so that was a really rewarding exercise for our students. But let me show you the 2018 program in which we were hacking ships at the Estonian Maritime Academy.
This is an event that TTU has organized in collaboration with Cambridge University. Here at the Maritime Academy, there are 4 simulators that simulate real ships. We have teams running those ships and then in the final event attacking each other.
At the moment, keep working on the cyber attacks that you've got going.
We need to have a plan.
Tango Foxtrot Charlie.
Yes,
this is Alpha 4, clear over.
There are rules, there are boundaries, but we're free to do whatever we want in those boundaries.
Northwest into commercial shipping channel to the position of
They're correcting their heading now apparently.
I feel that everybody here found something interesting for themselves. This is a great experience.
So that's really a summary of some of the active exercises that we get up to in our program when we go and visit Tallinn. We also visit a number of businesses. Skype, now Microsoft, have always welcomed us. Guardtime have always been very interested in seeing what we're up to. We also meet with Cybernetica. We visit the e-Estonia showroom, or the e-Estonia presentation area now as it is. And we've also had support from the Business Angels Network and other venture capital areas and entrepreneurial hotspots. as well. So we intersperse that as part of our program of effectively meetings with business and government and military, meeting, of course, with the NATO Cyber Defence Centre, as well as that summer school and the interdisciplinary cyber research workshop. So the students get a good sense of the pervasive way in which the digital environment manifests itself in Estonia, particularly around digital government and interaction with services, as well as the way in which cybersecurity is really taken seriously, not just by industry, but also by the people. So to give you an example of that, we had a program a few years ago now where we identified a surveillance camera on a network that was very close to where Estonia's submarine optical fiber cables arrived from Sweden. And so we alerted the network operator that they had a surveillance camera that was not secured, that was close to a sensitive area. It turned out to be a privately owned camera in an apartment block that just happened to be nearby. And yet, despite that, having informed the network that this was potentially a security risk, it was actually taken down and updated by the apartment owner within 2 hours. And that's just an astonishing turnaround by a civilian member of the public around cybersecurity. I just can't imagine seeing that here in Australia. So, how do we do this? Well, the cost for each student is around $6,000. It's usually $2,500 for airfare and around about $3,500 for accommodation, meals, the various other bits and pieces that they need to cover the costs for. However, we do get some sponsorship and some grants to facilitate this from the University of Adelaide, from the Endeavour short-term mobility and leadership program grants. In 2017, you saw earlier that Julie Bishop was at the Lock Shields exercise. As it turned out, I was aware she was going to be there because Andres Unger, the then ambassador, had informed me that this was going to be the case. And the following week, she was at the University of Adelaide receiving an honorary doctorate, having grown up here in Adelaide. So I made sure I was in the same room, and then it turned out that one of her speechwriters was one of my old students. So I had a bit of time with her, and as a consequence of that, we were able to receive a ministerial grant from the minister, discretionary grant. And we've also had private sponsorship from AustCyber and from Motorola Australia. So it's been quite a good, it's quite a well-supported program that we run here, and it makes that so much more affordable for the students. Of course, in Australia, the students are also able to use an overseas funding scheme, overseas studies funding scheme that's run through the federal government, and pay that back in a similar way to get that effectively pay it back the same way they do their HECS, their student loan. So that's been good. Jeff, really nice to meet you, by the way. We should talk. But that's not all. Since 2017, we've actually run a reciprocal boot camp here in Adelaide. So just as the experience in Estonia allows our students to be exposed to a society that basically understands cybersecurity, understands digital government, understands the effective use of private information, the weakness that we find in Estonia is engagement in a serious research culture. So what you effectively have with the universities, even Tartu Ülikool, so the old established university, is very much a focus on entrepreneurship. We find that in Estonia, many of the master's students, for example, will complete their coursework but won't complete their thesis. They will go straight out to work and say, well, I'll finish my thesis later, but right now there is so much demand for my skills that I just need to work. And the result is that we see very poor completion rates. So Adelaide, what does Adelaide have to offer back to Estonia? Well, what we are able to offer is an environment in which the students are able to engage with the research process. So we have a 2-week boot camp. We run that here in Adelaide in January. the students do spend most of the evening in the beaches, of course, and okay, thank you, Annalie, Tara Kirsty. But we have effectively 2 intensive weeks in which we begin with introducing the students to understanding the research process, developing a research question, and a proposal for how they're going to carry that out. For my honours students, that's a fast track for getting their program underway and their research project underway. For the PhD and master's students from Estonia, they similarly are then able to fast track their research understanding and develop a stronger thesis and result in publications. But it's not just Adelaide and Estonia. We also have a partner in Germany, which is Ravensburg-Weingarten University, with my colleague and friend, Tobias Eggendorfer. So Tobias is professor in cybersecurity at Ravensburg-Weingarten. He's also an avid South Australian wine drinker, so he will find any excuse to come here to Adelaide. And so we've now extended our program into Germany. So Tobias is here. Olaf Mennel, my colleague at Tallinn Ülikool. Olaf, let me rewind and give you some reason why Adelaide got involved in the first place. Olaf was actually a postdoc here in Adelaide some years ago. And there he met Kaya, and Kaya is Estonian, and they got married and they moved to the UK and they had children. And then they decided that maybe being closer to the grandparents would be a good idea. And Olaf was then appointed to Tallinn Ülikool as professor in communication security. So Olaf and Kaya are now in Tallinn, and this is effectively why the invitations all started. But that collaboration very much happens because of Olaf's initial push and my enthusiasm to engage. Tobias is at Ravensburg-Weingarten University. Kieran Lavelle was the head of the computer emergency response team at Cambridge University, came to our program in 2017 and liked it so much he moved to Tallinn. So he is now with Pipedrive, which is one of the cybersecurity companies in Estonia, and has an adjunct position now at Talltech, but he was for a long time, well, for a few years now at Talltech, running the incident response room at the university there. Adrian Venables is another expatriate Brit who came to Estonia, came to our program, liked it so much he's moved there. And Sten Massis ran our program in 2016 on cybersecurity, forensics, and law. Sorry, 2017. No, he wasn't. He ran the open source intelligence one. But he showed up as anonymous, so that's the picture you'll get from him. Sten has recently finished his PhD in understanding how to measure the effectiveness of serious games, particularly lock shields, and how that can be used to determine how effectively that training is being how effective that training is for the participants to be able to learn about cybersecurity and develop new skills. We are very interested in bringing Sten to Australia for his postdoc, and all I can say about that is watch this space, because that will happen. We have a tremendous opportunity there with a really skilled researcher. As I mentioned, we also now go to Germany. So in 2019, we visited Ravensburg-Weingarten University and spent a couple of days hacking Internet of Things devices. So really a technical program, staying in a traditional German holiday camp. So that was a bit of a different experience once again for our students. So we now effectively have a second stop when we're in Europe. We also visit CITIS, the Zentrum für IT Information, I'll say it in English, Center for Information Technology and Security, which is a German federal government organization based in Munich, where we look at a range of forensics and cybersecurity matters. In 2020, they offered, and we were in the advanced stages of planning to do some autonomous vehicle car hacking in Germany. Of course, that didn't happen, and nothing will happen this year, unfortunately, but we do hope to get back on track in 2022. So, what are the outcomes that we've had? Well, today I've had 48 University of Adelaide students and 8 staff visiting Estonia, including myself, but also including my PhD students as staff members. From Tallinn, we've had 27 staff and students visit Adelaide. We've had 22 distinct student projects, which are typically group projects at the University of Adelaide that have benefited from this program. We've published 45 related published papers and articles from the University of Adelaide. That includes student papers at ICR, published peer-reviewed journal papers, and also a couple of popular articles. So, for example, we've written from memory at least 4 or 5, I think it's 5 now, articles for The Conversation, talking about our experience from Estonia. I run a joint course on mobile phone forensics, so I run that here in Adelaide, but I also teach that into Tallinn. Our final class for this semester was last night. Next week, my Estonian students get the experience of presenting their findings in moot court, which is very intimidating for them, but it's very intimidating in real life. Adelaide and Tallinn are now engaging to formalise our cybersecurity collaboration. Sorell Kesma, tere tulemast, was here in February to assist us in engaging in that conversation, and also with working with the state government to further that collaboration. So it's a very exciting time around that, and in particular we'd like to see ongoing exchange of students, and in the short term, while we can't travel, to be able to collaborate in terms of course development and other ways in which we can work together. So this is quite a substantial outcome between particularly Adelaide and Estonia. It does take a team. I'm often given sole credit for this, but the only sole credit I'll really take is essentially making sure that the bridge stayed up. The foundations at each end are my colleagues, Professor Nick Faulkner, Richard Matthews, my recent PhD graduate, my current PhD student, Luke Jennings, my colleagues, Kate Duran, Yuval Yaram. We're hosted in Adelaide by the Joint Cybersecurity Centre and by AustCyber, which is the federal government initiative for engaging with small to medium enterprise in cybersecurity, and the Defence Science and Technology Group has also been actively supporting of our program. In Tallinn, Olaf Menel and the team at the Kyberkriminalistika ja Kyberjulgeoleku Keskus, or the Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics Centre. Sten Masses has also been very active in supporting us. And in Germany, Tobias Eggendorfer at Ravensburg-Weingarten Universität, and Professor Christian Hummert, who was at the time at Hochschule Mittweida in northern, former East Germany, and is now with CITES in Munich. Of course, one of the questions that I'm always asked by the students is Estonia safe? And in fact, one of my colleagues, Michael Webb, who hasn't been on the tour, but has managed to get to Estonia and to meet and to see the place, sent me a panicked text just as they were about to get on board and said, "Is Estonia safe?" And he quoted a whole bunch of stuff from a 2005, I think, edition of Lonely Planet. About, do the toilets work and what's the currency and so on. And of course, it was very out of date. But to answer that question, yes, we do see the Spitze-Saun, the traditional Estonian smoke sauna. The students do have the opportunity to sit out on the balcony at the top of the Teleton. So for those of you who are not Estonian, the television tower, the Teleton, is the site of one of the last stands against the Soviet occupation, in which the television station was being used to transmit pro-Estonian propaganda. I'll call it propaganda. and the Soviets, this is not entirely accurate, but we'll work with it, Soviet army was sent to shut down the TV tower, and the manager said, "That's fine, let me go and shut down the equipment, otherwise we may end up with a fire." Went back inside, barricaded himself in, and proceeded to transmit for the next 3 days, and eventually the Soviet army simply turned around and left, supported by very peaceful protests around the building. So it's a very poignant site to visit. There's a museum up at this level, and an opportunity for the students to sit 100 metres up in harnesses that I also inspect before I let them go out there. And of course, we were also introduced to things like the wildlife and hunting in Estonia. So with that, and of course, keeping in mind that we have had the opportunity on at least one occasion to visit the Laulupidu, the Song Festival, are there any questions?
Matthew, I have one. I just wanted to ask you about recruiting your students. Is there strong demand? Do you have to sort of limit the numbers, or basically you can take as many who can come along?
It's a really good question. Generally, I try and set the bar high so that the students are self-selecting, and if they meet that bar, then I will try to ensure that they can come along. The largest group I've brought over is 15, and to be honest, that was just a little bit too many. There's a sweet point of about 10 to 12 where the student group is large enough to be able to look after themselves. If it's any smaller than that, then we can work together as a team, and that's fine. But effectively, because of the cybersecurity boot camp in January, I really need to see that level of commitment before I'll allow the students to come along. So the related point, though, is that I very much see the students coming from my faculty, from electrical and electronic engineering, where I have a reputation and can promote this. We would like to see the students from the business school and from computer science and cybersecurity also participating. And it's difficult when you're working in a university that, on the one hand, is very research oriented and very successful, but on the other hand is very siloed, to be able to sell the message that this is a good thing that everyone can participate in. So generally speaking, I don't have any trouble finding enough students, but to date, with that one exception of the 15 students, it's generally been a Goldilocks size. So around that 10 to 12, just right size.
Totally agree on the silo comment there, Matthew, but that's an offline conversation we can have. Yes. I also want to know, do you actually have like a semester exchange option that students can do, or if they want to do a year of their studies in Tallinn?
So that's currently the conversation that we're having with Estonia. So in fact, we are precisely initiating that conversation at the moment. Because it's a technical space, and our semesters almost but don't quite align. It can be done. We haven't done this at this stage, and of course, just as we're getting into making this happen, COVID happens. Luke is here, my PhD student. I think would be quite interested in spending a semester in Estonia. That hasn't been possible over the last 18 months. But that level of exchange would be terrific. We are working on making that happen. This is a program that began quite organically. So, let's just see how it works. And we're really only now at a point where formalizing this and making sure that, basically turning this into a more formal process so that this has a proper foundation at both universities so that we can sustain this for the long term. Let me address the questions that are showing up in the chat. So have you looked into cyberspace applications, uplink, downlink, mission control, and satellite hacking? Yes, this is an active area of interest at the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre here in Adelaide. We've done some work for the Defence Science and Technology Group in that space. It's an emerging space. We've had some work on particularly GPS hacking, so global position system hacking. That's not the satellite itself, that's more the receiver side. So it's a hot space, it's a hot topic, and I don't think that the space sector has really got their head around the exposure that they have in the cybersecurity space. Let me address Sulav's question. What are my views on China and its state-level use of cyberware to monitor and ultimately socially engineer its citizens? It's a really interesting question. I don't think I can give you a 2-minute answer to that question. We're obviously quite concerned about the way in which China engages in quite pervasive surveillance. It's very interesting to contrast with the Estonian view of essentially saying it's my private information, but I really do understand why the government needs to understand some of it or have access to it to deliver services, so that transparency of the use of private data and private data ownership, I think, is something that very much attracts me to the Estonian way of thinking. It's in stark contrast to the way in which China works. It would be highly desirable, I think, for Estonia and Australia to exchange their experiences between of China and Russia when it comes to cyber warfare, cybersecurity, and hybrid warfare in particular. I think that would be a very positive area to be working towards sharing those ideas. Come back to your specific question, are all governments heading in this direction of socially engineering their citizens? China is as a government. I would suggest to you that Facebook is trying to for the rest of us. Other questions?
Can I come in?
Tere.
Hello to everybody. I'm not sure if everybody knows me, but I'm Kirsti. I'm the ambassador here in Canberra. Actually, I'm sorry I missed the introduction because it turned out we're registered with different names, so we got a bit puzzled about the passwords and all of that, but I'm here. So I missed your introduction, but thank you for all the work that you have been done on the cyber, and it's really impressive. And as you were describing, we're definitely hoping it's progressing and taking us forward, because we see a lot of cooperation potential between South Australia and Estonia. Also between the cyber ranges maybe, and the last point that you made on the working together between Estonia and Australia, just to mention, it's been our goal for a long time to convince Australia to be part of the NATO Centre of Excellence. So this invitation is wide and open to Australia, and hoping that maybe with the new minister we can come back to the issue and sort of look into how it could, and also the situation has changed. It's quite clear that whatever was Australia's relationship with China a few years ago, it's a bit different. But I just wanted to flag here also for the chamber, and we can talk on that with chamber more in detail. That I don't know if Matthew mentioned it already, but we have another trade-related thing with South Australia. Matthew, did you talk about it in the beginning?
I didn't. I thought I'd save that powder for you.
Okay, thank you. So another thing which was a result of my visit when I went to South Australia was that when I met the Trade Minister of South Australia, then I invited him to come to a trade mission to Estonia, and then the Trade Minister's office suggested, why don't we do something also before we can actually travel? So what we are now working with, and Matthew is helping with that in South Australia, is a virtual trade visit. At the moment, we are planning to have that on 15th September, but the dates are not yet final because we have to get confirmation from the ministers of both sides. So from our side, it would be the Minister of Trade. And the main idea behind that is the businesses matchmaking. So of course, there will be like ministers going the welcoming speech, and we will have keynote speaks. Probably from our side, it will be Siim Sikkut, so the same person that Matthew was referring to. And somebody also doing the keynote from South Australia, but most importantly, it will be businesses doing the matchmaking, and the businesses will be from the digital and cyber sphere, and also maybe AI, because that's an interesting sphere with South Australia. So just as a background, and we can talk more in detail with the chamber how to involve more you to that event. But it was happening happening more in detail just during a couple of past weeks. So I thought I mentioned it here as well.
Thank you. Yes, I wasn't quite sure whether I was allowed to mention that, so that's. We have a little bit more time for discussion and questions. Have we approached and have a need for networking vendors such as Cisco and Juniper to support your program? We haven't approached the multinational vendors such as Cisco and Juniper. Cisco are aware of what we do. There is some IP that they use. Intellectual property, not internet protocol in that context. We are working also with the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre. So, for example, in 2019, I was able to organise an invitation for Derek Grocke, who is the architect of the Cyber Collaboration Centre's cyber range, to attend the Locked Shields partner run, so effectively the shakedown run of Locked Shields. So the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre is very much designed with Locked Shields or Locked Shield type events in mind, based on that experience as well. So so that level of industry engagement, I've really been looking at that locally. We do have a number of vendors in Estonia who support this program as well, but they don't support the, if you like, the Adelaide component of it. It's more the overall overarching program that we run with the cybersecurity summer school and so on. Thanks, Christian. I'll look you up. In fact, if I click the link right now, then it'll show up in my feed in a moment. Fantastic. Good. I'm very happy to take any further questions or comments from people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will think of many questions after the session once they've had time to digest as well. In which case, get in touch with Matthew either on LinkedIn or by email, or of course you are welcome to contact through Chamber, and we will pass on your inquiries as well. No problem at all. We are hoping that Matthew will do a few more talks for us over time on various topics. By the way, in terms of Estonian linkage, Matthew is also an e-resident for Estonia.
I am. I'm one of the first ones, in fact.
Yes.
That was launched on my first visit. So I'm on my second card. It's fairly unusual, but it very much assisted when I joined the faculty at Tallinn, because I could do everything online.
Yeah. So we probably will also look at doing a talk around this topic. Sure. With Matthew and perhaps some other talkers to have a bit of a group or a panel as well. Of course, I mean, if there's no other questions now, please let me know if anyone still has any questions. Feel free to unmute yourselves or put into the chat. Anyone? I'm just having a look there. Christian also had an e-residency. A number of my students have taken up e-residency. I don't think they've actually started a company. I have had one company start up as a consequence of this program. We had a blockchain program called T-Provenance with a couple of my students. And they spoke with Kaidi Rusalep from Thunderbeam about how her program worked, which is a stock exchange using Bitcoin as a blockchain server. I'm not sure that that's currently working there. Jeff is going, but let me just acknowledge that Jeff Jarvis has also been running a program with Monash and the Tallinn Business School for a number of years in particularly marketing, I believe. I have met your students in Tallinn and had a discussion with them. It's been terrific to see that we're not the only program.
Thanks, Matthew. It's actually EBS, and it's been since 2003, but I'm happy to do another session as well. But thank you so much for your involvement, and really, really informative, and well done on that front.
Thank you, Jeff. But yeah, great to see that that's how that's working. Good. I've put an email address up in the chat as well. So if you want to contact me, feel free to use that. I do own sorell.ee, the domain. I used to own googie.ee for a year, which meant that all of the Google traffic could be redirected to me, which is an evil thing to do.
How did that work for you?
Well, it was actually set up by SDCERT, the Computer Emergency Response Team. And if you change the L to an I, then you can put it in as a capital I, and it looks like a Google link. And it just confuses people. But Google owns it. Google has bought it now off me. So,
well, here's a business idea for anyone.
Yeah, cyber squatting is not a good idea. Cyber squatting is not ethical.
So was that must have been one of the exercises that you can point out to students as what perhaps should not be done. But
yeah, so I mean, there are some real ethical challenges in teaching cybersecurity, because you need to be able to explain to students what can and can't be done. We need to get them into that black hat mindset to be able to defend. And we need to do that in a way, taking a risk that some students will potentially take that a bit too far. But if we don't teach it, then we will never know. Recently, in the last couple of days, in fact, there's been a spate of QR codes at businesses that have been overlaid with anti-vax links and so on. This is something we warned about when that started up as a potential risk of using that particular system. And we're now seeing it come to pass. Fortunately, the impact of that is not terribly high. It's just a bit inconvenient, but it's an example of that cybersecurity thinking.
Actually, Matthew, I would like to hear your opinion. How do you think the Australian public currently are interpreting cybersecurity? What is the level of awareness? I mean, in Estonia, it is kind of also a bit of a national pride to a point, and an export topic. But so the awareness may be, in general terms, higher. But so the general terms versus the depth of knowledge, how does Estonia and Australia compare?
Interesting question. I've seen the level of awareness and what we call cyber hygiene improve markedly in Australia in the last few years. Been a lot of push from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, the ACSC, and through government to really push out information programs around personal security, cyber safety, and so on. And that's been good. We see one of the key problems that we have is that our infrastructure is fundamentally not set up to be cybersecurity, to be cyber secure. For example, we push back all the time on having a national identity card in this country, and I understand why that's the case. We push back even harder, strangely, on having a digital cybersecurity identity, which is also strange, because being able to assert who you are online allows you to positively associate yourself with your personal data and to be able to control it. And the result of this is that we do see in this country a lot of identity theft related frauds, which is quite concerning. So you have, on the one hand, the realization that this is a problem, I think, has improved substantially here. The tools and techniques for managing that have improved substantially, but we are fundamentally held back by the fact that we don't have an effective digital identity. And don't get me started about MyGov, because it's not an effective identity. And nor is using the bank solutions here an effective personal identity. Keep in mind that a bank's personal identity is about protecting their financial assets. It's not about protecting your personal private information. When I take the students to Estonia to address this point, my view is not so much about ensuring that or promoting that we should copy or buy the Estonian solution for Australia. It's that we should be inspired by their thinking, we should be inspired by their attitude, and we should be developing solutions that look at this from a different perspective than what we may have at the moment about what is personal information and so on. That's very much the attitude that I take and that I try to develop to those students. One thing I haven't mentioned is that my students do go into cybersecurity roles in industry, whether that be in consulting or with NBN or Telstra. Some go on to postgraduate study, but those students, or in defence in particular, those students do take up those roles, and they're very much sought after because they've had that different experience and that different mindset to work from.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point. I mean, just because somebody does something very well for their circumstances or context, it doesn't mean that copying that would actually work for another context. So inspiration is, you're quite right, probably the most effective angle. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I would like to see some of that thinking pervade how we do things here, particularly, I mean, we are now starting to see a narrative around it's your personal data, but we need to look at, we need access to it for legitimate reasons, and therefore we're going to look after it for you in this way. That level of transparency, we're starting to see that improve here. That wasn't part of the conversation 5 years ago here. Question from Arnold: how much risk is there for smart home devices?
That could be a very big answer.
Huge.
Can
Yeah,
you repeat it in 3 minutes?
Yeah, they're hugely risky, but you weigh up the risks, you weigh up the outcome of them being hacked, you weigh up their convenience, and in making that assessment about, you know, do I want this device or not? You know, I have little covers on my camera here, you know, this sort of thing, to make sure that I can turn my camera off very easily. I'd love to have something for a microphone like that, but I think we just need to accept that the hackers are here, and this is the trade-off that we have. But yeah, no, there are some very, very poorly designed devices out there that do expose you, your personal data, your personal activities, and, you know, banking details and so on, through those devices that can be experienced. What do I think of cyber insurance products? You're better off spending your money actually doing some risk avoidance. For example, you know, I'm sitting here at a very expensive Mac desktop, which I do most of my work on. It's being backed up every 30 minutes offsite. Right? If ransomware hits this device, it's not going to affect me particularly much.
That is very good advice. Very good advice. Matthew, thank you very, very much. It was a very interesting talk. There were some very good questions, and to which you gave very engaging and interesting answers as well. We are very, very grateful to have had you for this talk, and we look forward to future engagement with you and the Estonian-Australian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thanks, everybody. My pleasure.